I'm sorry to trouble you, but thank you in advance, even if it's just for a little while. My sister-in-law has returned to her parents' home after her divorce. According to her, the divorce was due to differences in values and severe emotional abuse from her husband. Since my husband and I were already living with my in-laws, my sister-in-law apologized to us, looking quite remorseful. I had heard that she planned to find a new job and move out soon, so I told her, "This is your family home, so don't worry and take your time to rest." Little did I know that her return would start to trouble me. My name is Anna. I'm a 31-year-old housewife who works part-time. My husband is often away on business trips in other prefectures. Originally, we lived in a rental apartment, but at my mother-in-law's strong request, we started living with my in-laws. My son is often away on business trips, and I worry about Anna. Living together can save on rent and allow us to save money. We're getting old, so it would be reassuring to have you with us. I was a bit surprised when my husband told me about her suggestion, but I agreed. At the time, we had a good relationship with his parents. And more than anything, it made my life easier. After living together for 2 years, I now honestly regret it. Initially, I got along well with my in-laws, but everything changed last year, when my sister-in-law Rebecca returned home after her divorce. "Anna, I'd like to have pork cutlet for dinner today." Rebecca told me that as I walked in from my part-time job and let go of the grocery bags. "No, you can't just spring that on me. I was planning to cook salmon today." My mother-in-law, who had been watching from the shadows, interjected. "You know pork cutlet is Rebecca's favorite, don't you? As a daughter-in-law, you should consider the family's favorites when planning meals." "I'm sorry, I'll be more careful next time," I replied nonchalantly and ignored my mother-in-law's sarcasm. I headed to the kitchen to put away the groceries. The meek Rebecca, who had returned home after her divorce, was nowhere to be found. I think now that her apology to me and my husband was just an act, and she had planned to stay at her parents' home all along. My mother-in-law, initially very kind, is now completely under Rebecca's influence. Now, they both harass me daily, treating me like a maid. I do all the household chores, and with my part-time job, I'm always exhausted. Rebecca does no housework and contributes nothing to the living expenses. She either lounges around like a lazy bear or goes out dressed up gaudily. I think we should end this living arrangement, but my husband is often away, and it's hard to have a discussion about it. There's another reason too. Anna, welcome back. Even though it's Sunday, you've worked hard at your part-time job. I'll put away the groceries in the fridge, so take a break. Dinner is too much for one person, so I'll help you. Dad, thank you always. My concern is my father-in-law. With my husband gone, his kindness is what keeps me from falling apart. He treated Rebecca like a princess growing up, just like my mother-in-law did. But he's not afraid to call them out when she pushes me too far. She's my dear daughter, but I must correct her when she's wrong, he believes. However, every time, my mother-in-law scolds him, saying, "How can you, as a father, take your daughter-in-law's side over your own daughter? You're really a failure as a husband." I fear that once my husband and I leave this house, my father-in-law will be the one exploited and ridiculed instead of me. I reached the bedroom we use as a couple and sighed heavily. I took my wallet out of my bag and counted the bills inside, recording them in a notebook. There's a reason for this. A year ago, not long after Rebecca returned, I started noticing that the money in my wallet was decreasing. Money is missing again. It started with a few dollars feeling off and gradually increased. Being meticulous about money, I trusted my instincts and began keeping records. When hundreds were missing, I couldn't help but laugh at how obvious it had become that someone was stealing from my wallet. Despite taking measures like carrying my wallet around, Rebecca scolded me, saying, "It's in the way to carry a wallet around while doing household chores." I don't want to suspect a family member, but Rebecca is suspicious. It might seem bad to assume, but she hasn't worked since her divorce yet goes out often. How she manages money is a mystery. I've discussed this with my husband before, but there was no evidence. Next time, I'll definitely catch her in the act. It seems the thief is watching my movements closely, hardly showing any openings. I closed the notebook I had been recording in, put on my apron, and left the room. One day, as I was doing the housework that my mother-in-law had pushed onto me, I decided to take a break and headed to my room. Suddenly, I saw Rebecca opening the door and entering the room my husband and I share. Instantly, thoughts of the money in my wallet flashed through my mind. This was my chance to catch her in the act. Determined, I stepped in and found her frozen, clutching my wallet, even sticking her fingers inside it. This was definitive proof. "What are you doing?" In my calm voice, Rebecca hastily closed her wallet. "What do you mean?" "I just found your wallet in the hallway and thought I'd put it in your bag for you." "What were you doing, sticking your fingers inside it?" "If your story were true, you wouldn't need to do that, right?" Realizing she was suspected, Rebecca forced a smile. "Are you accusing me?" "I haven't stolen any money. You always carry around just $500. Aren't you being a bit paranoid?" Rebecca raised her voice and forcefully shoved the wallet back into my bag. There have been times before when the money in my wallet was missing. Please tell me the truth. Was it Rebecca who was taking it? Convinced that Rebecca was the thief, I confronted her directly. Indeed, I always kept about $500 in my wallet for emergencies. But I was the only one who knew that habit. "What's going on here?" Hearing Rebecca's loud voice, my mother-in-law appeared and looked at me. "Mom, listen. She's accusing me of stealing money from Anna's wallet. And she says I've done it several times before." At Rebecca's plea, my mother-in-law glared at me sharply. "Anna, how could you say such things to Rebecca?" Ever since Rebecca came back, I've found that money keeps going missing from my wallet. And now, I saw Rebecca entering this room without permission and touching my wallet. My desperate plea was ineffective against my mother-in-law, who unconditionally supported her daughter. A thought flashed in my mind that I should have recorded the evidence on my phone. But I was too focused on catching her in the act. How can you be such a horrible daughter-in-law? To treat Rebecca like a thief. I can't believe it. After all, you're just an outsider. Anna, you're just being paranoid. Perhaps you wanted to play the victim to attract attention? The word outsider hit me hard. I had tried my best as a wife and family member, even though it had only been 2 years. Enough was enough. Without saying a word, I left the room, slipped on my sandals, and walked outside. "Where do you think you're going without making dinner?" Rebecca's voice followed me. But I didn't care. My pace gradually slowed as it was getting dark and the wind felt cold. I had stepped outside in my indoor clothes and old apron, with bare feet and sandals, without my smartphone or wallet. Feeling lost, I sat on a park bench when, "Anna, what are you doing here?" I looked up to see my father-in-law in his suit. I recognized that apron from a distance. Embarrassed, I realized this apron was a gift from my mother-in-law when we agreed to live together. Taking the canned soda he offered, I thanked him. And overwhelmed, I began to cry. I told him everything, how the money had occasionally gone missing since Rebecca returned, and how today I finally caught her, but my mother-in-law wouldn't believe me. And both of them verbally attacked me. My father-in-law listened silently, then apologized deeply. I'm truly sorry. The behavior of my wife and Rebecca is too much. And I'm responsible for not stopping their misbehavior. Prefacing his next words with a thought he had been considering, he continued. Perhaps it's time to end the cohabitation. It's clear that neither I nor your husband would want you to endure this hardship. Surprised by his proposal, I was grateful but also worried about how he would fare without me. Anyway, let's go back. Buying a slightly expensive takeout might make them forget to complain. As I hesitated for words, my father-in-law smiled as if he could see right into my heart. As we returned home, just as I had imagined, my mother-in-law and Rebecca approached complainingly. Handing over the dinner I bought, their mood quickly improved. And they paid me no further attention. I used my father-in-law's distraction to go to my room and call my husband to discuss ending the cohabitation and to tell him about today's events. One evening a week later, as my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and I were having dinner, we heard the front door. It seemed Rebecca had returned from her outing today, but with a thunderous noise. Stomping down the hallway with a demonic expression, Rebecca appeared. Rebecca, please come home more quietly. Ignoring what my father-in-law said, Rebecca shot me a nasty look, pulled out a handful of bills from her wallet, and slammed them down hard on the table. Instead of the familiar $100 bills, these were just toy money showing a strange character, where you'd expect to see Benjamin Franklin. I was on a date with someone I met through a marriage agency today, and I embarrassed myself. Rebecca, were you engaged in a matchmaking service? I feigned surprise, which caused her to blush. That's not the point. What do you think you're doing? She shouted at close range, causing me to wince. I can hear you without shouting. Rebecca says she hasn't been taking money from my wallet. And since my mother-in-law doesn't believe me, I decided to put toy bills in my wallet as a test. It turns out Rebecca was the culprit after all. The fact that she used the toy bills without realizing only shows how habitual her stealing had become, probably not even bothering to check in the dim light of the room. I don't know who she was dating, but the person must have been quite shocked. Realizing she had inadvertently confessed due to my comment, Rebecca froze. At the other end of her gaze, my mother-in-law expressed shock, unbelievable. Rebecca, wasn't the pocket money I gave you enough? I've been giving you $300 a month from my savings. I can't believe what Anna said was true. My father-in-law, who had believed me from the start, looked at Rebecca with a look of astonishment. You were giving Rebecca that much money without telling me? My father-in-law sighed deeply as it was revealed that my mother-in-law had been giving Rebecca a substantial allowance each month. Rebecca began to make excuses. Well, if I remarry, I can be a housewife and live comfortably again. Finding a job and living alone is just too much trouble. This reasoning didn't hold up at all, and even though I had a lot to complain about, the notion that my money was funneled into Rebecca's matchmaking was just laughably absurd. Rebecca looked to our mother for support, but she averted her eyes. Realizing she had no allies left, Rebecca exclaimed, "It's just hundreds dollars." You've embarrassed me twice, unforgivable. And raised her hand. I instinctively closed my eyes, but felt no impact. When I opened them, my husband was holding Rebecca's arm, having arrived like a hero. To the surprise of the entire family. Why are you here? You weren't supposed to be back yet. My work finished earlier than expected. My husband responded gently to my question. Then turned to face my mother-in-law and Rebecca. I've heard everything from Anna and Dad. On the day I fled the in-laws' house, I had spoken to my husband over the phone, detailing the mistreatment by my mother-in-law and Rebecca, and my inability to tolerate it any longer. My husband was really apologetic, and thought we should swap the real money for some toy bills to catch Rebecca in front of my in-laws and back up my claims. Now that it's clear Anna was right, shouldn't Mother and Rebecca apologize? Faced with my father-in-law's words and my husband's stern look, my mother-in-law and Rebecca were at a loss for words. Didn't Rebecca promise to find a new job and move out immediately? At my husband's reminder, my mother-in-law retorted, "This is Rebecca's home too. She can stay as long as she wants." Of course, that would have been fine if Anna wasn't being made to suffer. My husband said, standing by my side and placing his hand on my shoulder, which gave me strength. I've gone over this with my father-in-law and my husband. But I just can't forgive you, Rebecca and mother-in-law. So, we're going to stop living together. My mother-in-law looked shocked, but I reminded her. You were the one who said I was an outsider. By the way, I spoke on the phone with Rebecca's ex-husband recently. Apparently, her misuse of money and her emotional abuse were the real reasons for their divorce, not what she had been telling everyone. He was furious that he hadn't demanded compensation out of compassion. This was news to all of us, and we all exclaimed in surprise. Why are you contacting him without permission? You're the one at fault for lying to us. Her ex-husband said he's definitely going to demand compensation from her. Rebecca's face, previously flushed with anger, now turned pale with fear as she trembled. It seems my husband had always had doubts about the reasons for her divorce. Inspired by my father-in-law's words, I decided to make a bold move and called the ex-husband myself. At this point, Rebecca was on the verge of tears. By the way, Rebecca, I've been keeping accurate records of the money you took from my wallet. Please make sure to pay it back. My words were the final blow, causing Rebecca to slump to the ground, utterly defeated. Half a year later, after my husband and I moved out, I learned from my father-in-law that my parents-in-law had kicked out Rebecca. According to him, my mother-in-law had finally come to her senses and was now like a different person, even doing household chores. We hadn't cut ties completely, but we decided to keep our distance unless necessary. The money Rebecca had stolen from my wallet was returned, although in installments, from the money she earned working. However, her ex-husband, outraged by her claims, sued her for compensation for the emotional abuse during their marriage. It's only right that she ended up like this because of her lies. Recently, I received an apology letter from my mother-in-law. I had a moment where I recalled my caring mother-in-law from when I just moved in. But there was no way to take back what happened after that. Now, with my husband's work more relaxed, we are enjoying a peaceful life together. I'm committed to never taking anyone's love for granted, and to ensuring I never hurt those important to me.